topic. And I thought it might be a bad idea to start with a poll. So we might actually send that poll to everybody, or at least tell them where they can get it. So the first thing you need to do is just go back one. Yeah. And if you just pull up any browser at all on a phone or an iPad or anything that you have along with you, I'm assuming you're on 3G or there is an internet connection here, which is Temple Bar Free Wi-Fi. You can go in on that as well. But if you just go in on the into any browser, put in slido.com, and then the particular code that's there. So event prof stub. I don't know, is it case sensitive? No, it's not. So it looks as if it is, but it's not. And when you do all of that, you'll end up on the Slido platform, which allows me to send polls to you and allows you to ask me questions. Right? So hopefully in the course of the how much you got, about 30 minutes, is it? Yeah. We can have a little bit of dialogue going on as well, and not just me talking all the time. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to start with a poll, just to see what people know or understand about incentive travel. And I think we'll release that poll now. So, what is it? And you've got your options there, you've no idea. You're not sure, but it sounds illegal. It's another word for bribery and corruption, potentially. It's 25% more expensive than normal travel. Or it's a cool tool that rewards high achievers with a travel experience. And it looks as if we've got a very bright audience here, which is fantastic. Excellent. So you can see the number of, on the top left-hand corner or right-hand corner from your position tells you that there's about now 15 people who have actually put in a vote. Just, I don't know if you know this platform. If you don't know it, it's just so easy to use, and it makes a huge difference, I think, if you're sitting there, that at least there's some platform that allows you to ask a question, because apparently, and this is research conducted by Slido itself, about 65% of any audience that you would actually speak in front of would not ever ask a question. So that's only 1 in 3 really would actually put up their hand and ask a question. Doesn't mean that everybody doesn't have a question. So on the Slido platform, what you'll find is you'll find 2 tabs, one for polls. There is one more poll which I'll send to you, and the other tab then is for questions. So any question that occurs to you in the course of what I'm saying to you, if you just pop it in there, and Aoife will tell me, she's controlling everything here from the front of the room. So I think we leave it at that. We've 17 people, and we have a very right audience, as I've said, that knows that it's a cool tool that rewards high achievers with a travel experience. In a way, that's all I needed to tell you about incentive travel, so I could actually stop the whole presentation at this point. But the next couple of slides are going to work up to that. So, yeah. What you might know is that, is MICE a term that people in this room are familiar with? Okay, so MICE is a term that's used within the broader kind of global tourism industry to designate a particular type of tourism that is high spending, by and large. And the acronym stands for meetings, incentive travel experiences, conferences, and events. So that's what the acronym actually means. And you can see in that kind of meetings, incentive travel experiences, conferences, and events, you've got a lot of activity coming into a destination, but not normal tourist activity. It's coming in from an overseas location, into Ireland or into Italy, wherever that destination is. But coming in for a meeting, if it's a meeting, it probably has some corporate kind of funding behind it, which means it's more high spending. If it's an incentive travel experience, it definitely has. That's what we're going to be talking about. If it's a conference, it might be a very large group of people. So at the moment, the Tech Summit is on in the RDS. That's about 12,000 people. 4,000 of them are coming from overseas. That's worth about €6.5 million to the Irish economy. So obviously that C in MICE is a lucrative element that is targeted by the tourism kind of authorities in Ireland. And then the E is what we all kind of represent, which is events. And events can be used as a generic term to denote all of that activity, because a meeting is also an event, an incentive travel experience is an event, and so on. Or it can be used to denote probably the kind of events that a lot of you are involved in, which might be meetups, it might be festival style events, it might be entertainment style events, or whatever. So it can be interchanged. But as a global industry, it's worth about 75 billion. The MICE industry on a global basis is worth about 1.03 trillion US dollars, based on a survey that was done last year, a global survey by Oxford International. Which, if you actually were to look at it in relation to other big industries like pharmacy, the pharma industry, or the automotive industry, or the IT industry, it's right up there. It's actually in the top 7 industries in the world. So sometimes when we're event organisers, we wonder, like, are we any use at all as an economic generator? And of course we are. We're very, very much of use, because we do more than just generate a value in terms of the economic return. We generate a value in terms of the cultural return, the social return, and the knowledge kind of exchange that happens at an event. In terms of a definition of incentive travel, these are various different definitions that are used. And I'll leave them there for a second for you to read. I won't read them back to you. And what I'll go on to then next is just a kind of a slide that highlights some of the key words. So I'll just give you another minute to look at that. And these are the kind of the key words that make an incentive travel experience what it is. The first one that I'd call out would be qualifier. So if you are on an incentive travel experience, if you come to Ireland because your company has launched an incentive travel campaign, and you've actually won the right to be there, you're a qualifier, you've qualified for the incentive. That has implications in relation to, I suppose, the expectations that you might have in relation to what you experience when you come into the destination. This is something that you have earned. You qualified for it. So therefore, it should be good. Winner is another word. You've won this, but you haven't won because you bought a ticket and your ticket was drawn out of the hat. You've won because you were first across the line. It's like a race. Incentive travel experience campaigns within organisations are usually contested by often a sales force, but not exclusively a sales force. And the top winners or qualifiers are the ones who get the travel experience. Hi, come on in. Yeah. Exceptional is another thing. So if I'm a qualifier or a winner because in my company I've sold more insurance policies or more cars than everybody else, I probably did that because of the effort that I made, because of the hard work, because I put in extra hours, because I wasn't always home at 7 o'clock in the evening. So there was a burden on my partner, on my family because of that. So in a way, I better be getting something exceptional delivered to me in exchange for what I have given. And often, in fact, usually, incentive travel experiences are offered to a qualifier stroke winner and the significant other, because it's recognised that the significant other has probably played a key role in ensuring that the person actually qualifies for the trip. So I'm supported by my significant other, and because of that I'm not under pressure, or at least I'm understood or I'm forgiven if I'm late home on a Thursday evening. So I better be getting an exceptional experience. It better be extraordinary as well. So if my significant other were able to kind of look online or in a tourist brochure and find that, I was doing a visit to the Guinness Storehouse as part of this trip, he or she mightn't be too impressed with that, because that's not extraordinary. However, if I was actually going to the Guinness Storehouse, but I was going to the Connoisseur's Bar, which only takes 14 people, and I was having a tasting kind of experience at the Connoisseur's Bar, delivered by the head brewer in Guinness, well then that might be a different story altogether. That's an extraordinary travel experience, as opposed to a tourist kind of experience going to a venue. And incentive travel is all about that. It's all about the extraordinary. Other elements that I put there, fully hosted. If I'm on an incentive travel experience, I'm not going to be putting my hand in my pocket at all. The company for whom I work and with whom I qualified for this trip is going to be paying for everything. And I'm going to be just sitting back there enjoying it. It's all expenses paid. Inside the velvet ropes is a kind of an image just to designate the idea that incentive travel experiences are VIP experiences, inevitably. So if, for example, as part of my incentive travel experience, I was being brought to the 3 Arena for a concert, I wouldn't be standing in line with everybody else. I would be kind of in the other part where there's no line, and I would be kind of whisked straight in, and I would be in the hospitality suite or whatever. So these are all the kind of the expectations that an incentive travel qualifier or winner would have. And from an events perspective, these are all the weird and wonderful things that must be dreamed up in order to actually deliver an incentive quality experience in a destination to an actual winner. Incentive travel it's evolving. So I started working in this industry way back in the 90s. And when I started working in the industry back in the 90s, it was all about luxury. So incentive travel qualifiers, in a way, if they weren't staying in the most expensive hotel in a destination, well then, you know, it wasn't the kind of experience that they actually really worked so hard to get. They wanted to be part of the international jet set. Golf would have been a huge element. Just think about, you know, the corporate kind of money that used to be in golf as an activity from a sponsorship perspective. And incentive travel qualifiers wanted to actually partake of that at that time. You'd want to be staying in a Four Seasons hotel, because that would be imprinted in your mind as an image of kind of top luxury. You'd want extravagance. And the type of destinations that you would actually be regarding as incentive quality destinations would be London, Paris, New York. So big, exciting tier 1 cities. So that's not the case now. That doesn't mean that it's not the case at all. We've got a very interesting kind of demographic that we're dealing with, where there's probably for the first time maybe 4 different definable demographic groups in any workplace. So you've got older people like me, and you've got younger people like a lot of you, and then you've got people in between. And in a way, we're all going to be excited or stimulated by different things. But by and large, the incentive travel qualifiers today are not so much looking for luxury, or if they're looking for luxury, they're defining it in a particular way. They're defining it as an authentic experience, an authentic encounter. And we could spend a whole hour kind of teasing out what that means. And I'm sure it's part of your own kind of framework when you're creating events, that they must be real, they must be authentic. The international jet set idea is kind of not really what I want anymore. I want to be down with the locals. I want to go where the locals go. Because if I do, then I'm having an authentic experience. If I'm kind of, you know, with the international jet set, it's kind of, it's ersatz, it's just not real anymore, and that's not what I want. Wellness is a big focus now in incentive travel programs instead of golf. And wellness covers everything from, on a typical incentive travel program now, you'll have a 5k run every morning at probably 6:30, some ungodly hour. You'll have yoga, you'll have massage, you'll have meditation, you'll have mindfulness. All of these are elements that are part and parcel of incentive travel programs now, because in many respects, you've worked so damn hard to get it. Now that you have this 5 days or whatever number of days it is, you want to really kind of do the opposite to what you have done before. So you want to really relax. So wellness is a big thing.
A nice walk unspoiled.
Exactly. That's because that's the. Isn't there a book called A Walk Spoiled?
I'm not a golf.
Yeah. There's a book called A Good Walk Spoiled, which is a definition of golf apparently. But yeah, this is a nice walk unspoiled. So you still want luxury, but you don't necessarily want a name brand like the Four Seasons, because everybody knows that that's a luxury brand. You want something like, say, the Banyan Tree, which is a lot more kind of recherché. It's a lot more kind of, only those on the kind of the knowing scale realise that Banyan Tree is probably kind of, trying to think of another one now, I can't off the top of my head, but Banyan Tree is probably a more kind of high-touch luxury experience than Four Seasons. They have fewer hotels. Four Seasons has already kind of crossed that line to become a chain, an international chain. And incentive travel winners don't want to be in a chain experience. They want to be in something that's a lot more personalised. So therefore, I just put Banyan Tree as an example. Extravagance used to be part and parcel of incentive travel programs, and over the years, in the media, every so often, some incentive travel program would be reported upon. Usually involving kind of somebody, having albino dwarfs distribute cocaine at their event, which is all paid for by the company. That just doesn't happen anymore, or if it does, nobody knows about it.
Anymore.
Well, not that I'm aware of anyway.
It's going to be Julian Assange distributing.
But so the extravagance thing is not anymore something that I'm prepared to sign up to, or that I want to be part of, or that I'm proud of. And it's being replaced in incentive travel programs with CSR, with corporate social responsibility actions. So you will see incentive travel programs that come to Ireland, for example, beating a path down to the hole in the wall, the Paul Newman facility, where they can actually do really interesting work with cancer patients who are children. That's a big kind of positive thing that is at the core of incentive travel programs now, because in a way, it's the way I want to be during these programs. I don't want an extravagant experience. I want a worthwhile, purposeful experience where I'm actually doing some good as well. And then the tier 1 destinations like London, Paris, and New York, they'll always be popular. But what's coming into play now is a focus on tier 2 and tier 3 destinations, and a lot of that is driven by concerns over safety. So all of the London and Paris and New York have all been in the news for the wrong reasons over the last 20 years from a terrorist perspective. Whereas the other ones on the other side have not. So there is a kind of a real concern around safety that's driving business out of big, well-known destinations into less well-known destinations. That's absolutely happening. But it's also happening because people want to discover something new. They probably were a much more kind of democratically travelled society now than ever before. People have been a lot more places than they would have been 20 years ago. And because of that, it's the tier 2 and the tier 3 destinations that are becoming popular, because people haven't been there before. So Glasgow, Bordeaux and Nashville are just 3 that I put up as an example. Now I'm going to go into something kind of a little bit more technical here. I just want to check what the...
Could I ask you how
of course you
Dublin
can.
or any Irish cities or towns are doing on that? Are they coming into their core?
That's the second part of the yeah, no, I want to see the I want to see that poll. Yeah, okay. So I'll do this bit first and then I'll send you another poll. So, self-liquidating, I always kind of hesitate to say that word because I want to say liquidizing. And that obviously means a totally different thing. You don't want to self-liquidize. But self-liquidating means that the thing pays for itself. And I'm going to just show you, this is why I'm saying it gets a little bit technical. There's a little bit of maths involved in the next bit. So bear with me, because it's crucial in terms of actually understanding where incentive travel comes out of and how, in a way, there are really two realities. There's the reality of the delivery piece, which is all about the destination, which we will talk about in a few minutes. And then there's the reality of the fact that it's what we defined at the beginning, that it's a cool tool in an organisation that can be used instead of cash to motivate people to actually achieve exceptional performance levels. So here's how it works. And I've kind of restricted this to a sales environment, even though incentive travel increasingly is being applied outside of sales environments. But its classic application would be within a sales environment in an organisation. And if we were to drill down even further, we would identify that the sort of industry sectors most likely to use it would be automotive, so selling cars. It would be IT, so selling kind of computer systems or software, whatever. It would be finance and insurance, so selling insurance policies or pensions or whatever. These are the kind of the classic industries where incentive travel is used rather than cash or in addition to cash to reward an employee. So you have a sales target, and these are units, so they could be any currency at all. So imagine an organisation and it has a sales target for a particular year of €1 million, we'll say euro. And what it's trying to figure out is, how can I actually get my sales team to overperform on that? I want more than $1 million. I want a real kind of effort being made this year. I want to kind of campaign and I want to kind of outperform. So the sales director comes up with, well, let's go for 30%. So can we actually generate 1.3 million? And that's kind of, that's set as the, that's not a buzzer meeting that I have to stop, is it? The interesting thing then is the next line. The budget for the incentive travel experience is taken from the stretch target. So based on selling 30% more, 300,000 more, I'm going to actually spend 150,000 to encourage or motivate or incentivize my salespeople to reach that target. So that's the self-liquidating part of the whole scenario. So I spend money, I spend more money, but I make that money, and then out of what I make, I pay for what I'm actually setting out to do. What frequently happens with incentive travel programs when they're launched within an organization is they outperform the target, because the way they're structured is you have a sales force of 100 people. You set your kind of your different thresholds in such a way that only a top percentile will actually qualify. So what happens is that everybody's effort ends up contributing to the actual kind of sales figure that's actually achieved, and you end up outperforming what the target was. So if you do the maths on it, you know, you've made 400,000 more than what you would have made if you didn't have any incentive program at all. It's cost you 150 grand for the incentive program, so the return from the incentive is 250,000. And that's how it works. So it's not an expense item in an organisation. It's actually a profit centre. It's an additional kind of amount of funds that's actually earned as a result of it. Yeah, so now we're going to do that. Having heard what you've heard, I want you to take the next poll. So if you just go back into Slido. And the questions are, based on what I've heard, I would like to know, how to get involved in incentive travel, whether my products services can be included in an incentive travel experience, how extensive is incentive travel in Ireland, how does Ireland compare as an incentive travel destination with other destinations, and then nothing. You've heard enough.
It's very democratic altogether.
It's interesting now that nobody so far wants to know whether their products or services can be included in an incentive travel experience. That's interesting to me. But people are interested in Ireland and incentive travel, which is good because that's the bit I'm going to talk about now. There's one person. I think we had 17 votes the last time, so we'll try and get to that again.
Who's about to leave?
Okay, they're not coming. They're not forthcoming, so we'll skip out of it and go back to the slides. Oh, there was a big change there happening. Just pop your mic up. Yeah. It all changed. Okay, now we do have our 17. Right. Very good. So the 11%, you'd feel free to leave. No problem. I won't be offended. But you are going to hear a little bit more, so click me out. Yeah. So I didn't really introduce who I am. So now I'm going to tell you that. And that will lead into the whole Ireland piece. That's me speaking at an event in Asia. I'll get to that in a minute. But I started a company with the other gentleman there, he's called Pat Delaney, in 1993. I'd been a teacher, and I'm an Italian speaker, and I had worked for a number of years as an Italian-speaking tour guide. And I was conducting tours of Ireland for various different incoming tour operators here. And every so often, somebody would say, this is an incentive. And I had no idea what they were talking about. Other than the fact that I realised that on the incentive, everybody was much better dressed. They had a lot more money, and they tipped me a lot more than all of the other tours that I actually did. So I was very interested in incentives for that reason and that reason alone. So that was my first introduction into kind of the travel piece. And I realised then over time that this was an amazing job. You know, you were getting paid to talk about your country, and I love Ireland. So I was talking to Italians about Ireland, and they loved Ireland as well. And you know, it's just all a kind of a very, very nice kind of feeling and so on. And I realised that, you know, maybe there's kind of an opportunity to actually do this on a full-time basis. So over a period of time, I left teaching, and in 1994 I started with Pat, two guys in a dream, and we said we're going to actually run a company in Ireland that would specialise specifically in creating incentive travel experiences for companies all over the world. So that's what we set out to do. It took us a while. We kind of grew from 2 people to about 60 people by 2007. And in 2007 we sold our company to a Swiss-based company that was doing exactly the same thing, and we became, I suppose, corporate citizens. We became kind of employee number 301 and 302 in a very, you know, large, expanding organisation. And we were given the responsibility of building what we had created in Ireland with our 60 employees at other destinations around the world. So we created, with the Ovation Global DMC brand, about 100 locations around the world where we were offering services in those destinations specifically aimed at the MICE sector, and particularly in the incentives travel sector. So that's how I kind of came to do what I did. And I'll just kind of run through a couple of memorable gigs. My
most memorable gig from last year was actually the Rolling Stones in Croke Park. I don't know if anybody was there. Very unexpected. Was expecting nothing. It was amazing. Just a really good gig. That's why I put that picture there. Anyway, my first memorable gig. How much time have I got?
Say about 5-10 minutes.
5. Okay. So it'll just give you an idea of what we're dealing with. So New Holland sales staff, 100 sales staff, hole in the wall. So this New Holland, you know what New Holland is?
No.
Tractors. Okay. So we were told we had to create a program for 100 salespeople from New Holland from the UK. And then when we scratched a little bit more below the surface, we realised they were all men. So how do you build a kind of an interesting program when the demographic is completely male, without doing all of the things that are either illegal or kind of cliched, you know? And you know, so that was the big challenge. And this happened a long time ago. This is before mobile phones and so on. But I just wanted to tell you this particular memorable gig. So we were doing an event in the Hole in the Wall. Do you know that pub?
Yeah.
Beside the Phoenix Park.
Yeah.
And it's the longest pub in Ireland, as you can see. And one of the features of incentive travel is everything has to be very exclusive. At least that's what the organiser wants. It's not necessarily what the participant wants, but the organiser, who's kind of, you know, the company, wants their logos everywhere. They want everything branded. They want nobody else coming into the room. And anyway, we had set up the function in that way. We had kind of done our deal with the hole in the wall. We were bringing 100 sales guys from different kind of or rural areas in the UK to the hole in the wall on this particular Friday night in October. And everything went very well, and the event was just going exceptionally kind of well. And then we realised that there was a queue forming outside the door into the venue. And when we examined the queue, it was every nubile woman in Clonsilla was actually in that queue, because the hole in the wall had actually kind of let it be known that there were going to be 100 guys on their own in the hole in the wall on this Friday night. And anyway, at a certain stage the door had to be opened, and it ended up being the highlight for the participants, as you can imagine. It was a real lesson to us, because with an incentive travel experience, there's only one invoice. So this is an open bar. They can go up and order what they like. But now they're going up. We were trying to explain afterwards why there were kind of gin and tonics and baby shams and vodkas and all sorts of drinks that, you know, the New Holland sales guys obviously didn't have. So that was a very memorable gig from earlier on. What's the next one that I have here? Yeah, a financial services company that I can't even remember the name of, from Australia. There were 250 of them. And they were staying between Dromoland Castle and Adair Manor. And they wanted something that had never been done before, which is a kind of a common request with incentive travel experiences. You know, we want something that's never been done before. So what you always do is you kind of pretend it's never been done before. But this particular group wasn't having anything. They wanted something that was never done before. So one of the things that we did for this group was we organised a football match where the first half was played with Aussie rules and the second half was played with Gaelic football rules. And we had all of the 250 participants at the event, all kind of lining the pitch, plus the entire population of Enniskillen, which is where this event took place. And it was a wonderful kind of, in a way, celebration of what happens in travel when you create kind of encounter possibilities. The other thing that we did, so the football match ended, and then there was no specific location for food. We had made arrangements that they just go into any bar they wanted, and there was food available in all the bars. It was all catered and kind of brought in advance. So effectively they took over Enniskillen. And then at a certain stage they could hear this ruckus going on outside, and obviously they came out of the pub, and when they came out of the pub there was a faction fight we staged a historical faction fight on the streets of Ennistimon for this particular group from Australia. So that was another memorable event. Another memorable event was 100 couples, so 200 people, in the O'Reilly Hall in UCD. And we had a kind of a reveal. So the reveal is where it looks as if the event is going one way, but then it goes another way. So it looked as if this event was a celebration at the end of their time in Ireland, where they were all given their specific awards for reaching their targets and so on. And there was Irish dancing, and there was kind of traditional Irish music. And then the curtain came across, and the opening kind of sounds then of a very famous song started, and the curtain opened, and Lionel Richie popped out his head and says, "Hello, is it me you're waiting for?" And that was, you can imagine the experience for 200 people in close proximity to one of the most well-known recording artists of our time. That's what incentive travel does. That's the extraordinary experience that makes you want to actually have that beyond that trip the next year, because you've worked so hard to get it this year. If the experience is brilliant, then you'll want to have it next year. This is strangely, this is an event that we actually did. I actually found this on the internet. So this is our set. The Mansion House was using it, but this was Pixar, and there were about 400 attendees, and we created a pretty spectacular event in the Mansion House. But I put this one up because it had the coolest, cheapest event idea that I ever came across in my life. So I'll share it with you. And it's this, and we didn't think of it. The event person from Pixar had this idea and wanted to do it. We just actually made it happen, and then of course it became ours, and we sold it to lots of other people. But what we did was, all of this was in complete darkness when people arrived. And as they arrived through the door of the Mansion House, they got a tea light. And they carried the tea light. Each couple had a tea light. They carried the tea light into the room. First there were 2 tea lights, then there were 4, then there were 6. And gradually, as people kind of filled up the room, it was filled up with live flame. And it was one of the most emotional things that I've ever seen happening. And completely kind of, in terms of budget, like that cost a shitload of money to do, as you can imagine. Look at all those lights, look at the set, that cost a fortune. The tea lights cost nothing. And it was a real kind of illustration to me about the power of creativity in events. It's not like anybody in a way can do that, but only a real event professional can come up with that genius idea that literally kind of tugs at your emotions. Do I have another one? Yeah, one more and then I'll stop. This is a bottle of wine that I'd never heard of in my life until this particular thing happened. And it's just to illustrate what does take place on incentive travel experiences. So the founder of Domino's Pizza, and that's one of the other things that happens, you end up kind of dealing sometimes with people who have a reputation or a renown on a global basis. And the founder of Domino's Pizza was organising a very, very high-end event for about 30 people. And his name is Tom Monaghan. He's an extraordinary guy. Insofar as in his life he has gone through a whole bunch of different things that he was fascinated with. At one stage he was the world's biggest collector of Bugatti motor cars. At another stage he owned the Detroit, whatever they are, one of the football teams, and he was interested in that. At another stage he had the world's largest collection of Frank Lloyd Wright memorabilia. And at another stage he was a wine connoisseur. So just one of these intellectually curious individuals who's into things. So he had specified the wine on every single dinner that we were having. And the wines were all stupidly expensive in each case. Now this guy is Domino's Pizza, so no issue for him. And at the end of the trip, he's also kind of quite advanced in age, as were a lot of the people on his trip. They were all in their kind of mid to late 70s. And this was towards the very end of the trip. We were in Sheen Falls Lodge for the final event. And we had a couple of guest speakers at dinner. And I could see what was happening already at this stage. First of all, there were 10 bottles of Grand Puy Lacoste that had been decanted. So they're already kind of, out of the bottle now, they're in a decanter. And they're on a unit to the side of the table. And around the table, I can see women and men in their 70s and late 70s who are kind of going like this and not really listening to the speaker. The speaker finishes, and then gradually everybody kind of just shuffles off. And myself and another event organiser were left with 6 full carafes of this particular wine, Chateau Grand Puy Lacoste, which absolutely had to be consumed or else they would be ruined. And these are some of the other wonderful things that happen to you as an event professional. Anyway, what I'm doing now, that's some stories from the past. Answering the questions about Ireland as an incentive destination, Ireland punches way above its weight as an incentive destination. It's particularly out of the United States, it would be in the top 5 locations probably in the world that they're going to at the moment. When they come, they spend serious amounts of money. The Irish Tourist Board has a kind of a metric that it uses for MICE tourism in general. So that's the meetings, incentives, conferences and events. They have a blended amount that per head they spend about 1,600 when they come on a trip to Ireland. That's also averaging the number of days that they're here for. That's 3 to 4 times what a regular tourist spends. So it's serious money. With incentive, that goes up again. And certainly some of the incentive travel experiences that we have delivered, the average spend per head would be more like 5,000. When you add in Lionel Richie, that was €250,000 of fee for Lionel Richie, and another €100,000 of fee for his band and his backline and his production, and then our production on top of that. But if you're entertaining your top people who have kind of really, and that's the way it works out, it's the 80-20 rule in business as well. Your top 20% are producing 80% of your revenues, and now you're dealing with the top of the top. So this is very, very small money by comparison with what these particular individuals are generating for your company. And you need them to do that year after year. So if they don't see Lionel Richie sticking his head out from behind the curtain, maybe they won't make the same effort in the next year. So Ireland is doing spectacularly well as an incentive travel destination. It continues to actually be off the charts. We have left the company that we were with, which was Ovation MCI, and for the last couple of years we've been working in a consultancy role under the moniker Sún Nua. We work with destinations, venues, hotels, agencies, associations, specifically around strategy, marketing and training. Working on a project with the Guinness Storehouse at the moment. We work in Slovenia, we work in Washington DC, various other places. So that is really, I know I probably took more time than I'm sorry for